Welcome to Beyond the Forge, the podcast where entrepreneurship meets real life. We're diving deep into the raw truths, personal journeys, and relentless battles faced by founders, dreamers, and doers. No fluff, no filters, just authentic conversations about building businesses, tackling mental health, navigating life's toughest challenges, and the unspoken realities of raising a family in today's world. Join your hosts, Jay and Chantal Cadmus, as we explore stories that inspire, provoke thought, and remind us all that we're never alone in the struggle. This is Beyond the Forge. Let's get real.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Forge. I'm Jay, and as always, here with my lovely co-host, Chantal.
Hey everyone, it's so great to be back and thanks for tuning in. If you're just joining us, don't forget to check out our earlier episodes as we take you all through our journey and origin story and why we started this podcast.
And I wanted to point out that this special edition of the podcast episode with our commentary is exclusively on the audio version of this episode. If you all want to check out the video version, we will link a YouTube video down in our show notes.
Now, I didn't get a chance to participate in the discussion, but in this episode, we're introducing a special guest. Jay had the opportunity to talk to him and get him on our show, and I can't wait to dive right in.
Yeah, this guest, he's been through so much in life. And when I tell you that he's been through the ringer, I mean, this guy has really gone through life from the bottom of the barrel. I know him. He's a friend and a former colleague of mine, and we go back several years. We've brought on Mr. Sileon Murray Sr. onto the show. Cillian is the founder and current CEO of SURV7X, which is an IT and cybersecurity company that he built himself. Now, when I tell you that he came from nothing, trust me, listen for yourselves. He has an amazing and powerful story to share with all of you.
I think that's an understatement. His story really hits hard. If you're not tearing up, I guarantee you will at least take away something from wisdom this man has learned through all of his experiences. So let's get into our episode. Cillian, welcome to the show.
Well, yeah, it's great to see you, man. I mean, it's been a while.
A long while. It's been about 8-9 years.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there.
So
I
you're,
can't remember exactly.
Yeah, I think we were both working for the same company. I was there briefly back in 2018.
Wow. That's a good wow. Good wow.
Yeah. So I was doing a refresher and I was looking at your site, and so you've got SURV7X, and are you doing that full time now?
Yeah, it's full time. This is all I do.
Okay. So when did you leave doing your defense contracting work?
I just left permanently about a month and a half ago.
Oh, wow.
So I've been doing this literally on the side. It's a bit of a conflict of interest as I start moving into the defense space.
Yeah, I saw that.
Separated from them.
I saw that you were getting federal contracts in place, and I saw the NAICS codes, and you got your cage code up, and I'm like, okay, I think you're in a good space, and now you're starting to hire.
Yeah, it's just a lot of moving parts, a lot of moving pieces here, man.
That's good.
And the whole conflict of interest things is important to just keep that proper, just done right. So I didn't want any of that happening.
Yeah.
And of course, growing a company is like having a brand new baby, man. So as you know very well for yourself, it requires a lot of work, a lot of TLC. So separating it out was the smartest thing to do.
Yeah. And I can imagine that going all in on this now, it's really got your full engagement and your full focus where you can actually start to build and scale and just really focus on the business development more hardcore on that.
You got it.
Yeah.
You got it, man. That's exactly what's happening right now.
I'm trying to do the same thing, but I had a real question posed to me from another entrepreneur who helps people scaling up their businesses. And he was he was really digging into what my constraints were. And I told him, to be honest, I laid out some points, and he's like, what it really comes down to is it just doesn't look like you have too much runway and you have a time constraint. So it's just a matter of if you get to that point to bring this more, like let's scale this up more, you're pretty much capped at what you can do. I'm just literally trading time for money. So,
well, I mean, you have to start somewhere though, right? Like that's just the logic of it. And so I don't see anything wrong with that per se. And probably like most entrepreneurs, you discover things as you start your company. I'm sure the day that you started, if you looked at where you were a year ago and where you are right now, you have differences there, right?
Oh, yeah.
So those differences are things that you're learning. Nobody in any arena in the entrepreneur space, in my mind, started to place and was like, man, this is exactly what I'm going to do in the next 10, 15, 20 years with technology changing and things that are changing around the way. So I think you're spot on right where you should be. And as you learn, as you see things, you'll adapt, you adjust. You're a smart guy.
Yeah, I think the same could be said for you. I mean, you're a role model. But yeah, I mean, I want to peel back those layers, right? So people see a growing company, they see entrepreneurs, and they don't understand a lot of the times that they're human beings on the other side that are running these businesses. And there's just a lot of misconceptions with those perceptions. Yeah. It's like, well, I don't really want to talk to these people, or they think they know what's best, or they just don't want to deal with it. But it's like, well, you have to understand from a different perspective that these are actual human beings. And if you wanted to start somewhere or wanted to start a company, you could do that too. And they were just in your shoes however many years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you grew up in North Carolina, right? Like you came from North Carolina.
Born and raised Carolina. Yep.
And I want to get more into that, because from where you came from to becoming a tech entrepreneur where you are today, do you want to share a little bit more about your beginnings and what initially sparked you and your desire to make a difference? How this is going to tie your background from where you started at to having that profound desire to actually make a difference and escape where you were before?
Oh, my. If you want to go back there and take a peek at that is most definitely a starting point that you don't see where you're going to go in the future until you get there. Almost the whole stairwell illuminating before you take the next step. Scenarios would happen to me. But I grew up in Red Springs, North Carolina. That's where I started. And if you Google that town right now, population is like 2,600 people, 2,700. And it was like that back in 98, 99. Left high school and came to the military. I didn't even know how to get into the military, to be honest. A lot of what I did growing up was simply went to a Christian private school, and our academic level of education was actually subpar. So when I graduated high school, I tried to go into college and found out real quick that I wasn't smart enough to even qualify for my generals. So I had to take these remedial ed classes to even qualify for college. I got my first college bill. I realized real quick, dude, you can't afford this. So I started looking for options. And fortunately, we had a friend that just so happened to have gone into the military the year before I did. And he was a roadway pack. And my mother had a friend who had went into the Army and was an officer in the Army. And that friend of my mom's is the one that basically said, hey, you might want to try out the military. So I came in the military as a cop, and I was a tinkerer of a kid, but just didn't know anything. So I just tinkered around with things. And when I came in as a cop, my brother told me, hey, it's going to be hard. You see our upbringing, we grew up poor. I'm talking dirt poor. And putting some context around poor, my first house was literally a square box that had, it was just layers of wood on top of each other. Oh. We had a water pump in the backyard. We had an outhouse where we went to go use the restroom and some small farm animals, some pigs and chickens there. And to get electricity, we ran it from our neighbor's house over to ours through a long drop cord, an extension cord. we had the life water bottle in our refrigerator, and that was to prime the pump that was in the backyard to get water. And we had a wood burning stove, and that's how we cooked our food. That's how we warmed the house. That's how we warmed up water to take warm baths in this big tin tub. And my brother and I, back then, we took baths in the same water because, of course, it was almost impossible to take baths and get warm water in. So that's where we started at. And the house didn't have insulation. It was just wood laid on top of each other. So there were some pieces of wood where you could literally see outside, like you could see outside from inside the house. It was pretty bad.
Yeah.
So we graduated from that to the projects. So I remember being a kid, we were excited to go into the house that actually had a dial that you could slide and turn the heat on. I remember being excited about that as a kid. And we didn't know that we were poor. Like we had no idea what poverty was. And the majority of our family grew up in that area, and we grew up in that same type of environment. So it was just normal for us to live like that. And the change for me, I think, happened in like 1991. I left home with a friend of mine that was a part of the church, and we drove. That was my first time leaving the state of North Carolina, and we drove to Texas. And when I got to Texas, I saw that people actually had houses and people lived and they owned things. And it was just like a baffle to me as a 10-year-old kid. I think this was 91. When I saw that, I was just like, so you mean to tell me that people actually do live in these type places? And it was a spark. So I started looking and I tried to figure out, how do I get out of this? And of course, that's how my story began. And my desire began was when I left that little small town and saw and got exposed to, better quality of life, better living, and just better all around.
Yeah.
That was the start of it.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because like we kind of have like similar upbringing. Mine wasn't that harsh, but I remember I grew up in Section 8 housing, and I had a single mom, and she immigrated from the Philippines, raising 3 kids on her own, barely knew a lick of English. So she had to learn how to get by.
Yeah.
Not even able to procure a job, and learning how to survive on what resources she could find out. So it was trying to be resourceful.
Oh,
I didn't even realize how bad it was, but she was resourceful. So, I mean, I grew up in the same light where I didn't know we didn't have anything. And so having a Christmas where I had like a sweater or a small Lego set, and I was just like, oh, this is awesome. I was super excited. And I would play the heck out of that thing for years. And I was just grateful for the little things. And it was like not until I got older and realized they're like my teenage years. And I was like, oh, people have this and they have that. And they can do things and they can go on vacations with their parents. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I was like, I kind of want that too. But I started looking for ways out. I mean, I was a high school dropout, but I eventually picked it back up and I was able to get into the military. So did the Air Force thing like you did.
Yeah.
I was only 10 years active duty, but when you knew me back at Peerless, I was in the reserves at that time. And it's crazy how our paths were kind of forged in somewhat of a similar light. So you go into the military and you did your time and you approach that in a different way. Like as the military is shaping you and you're going through getting the leadership skills and the discipline and how that's shaping your life. So how does that shape your approach to business and leadership today?
Well, that story of me getting introduced to the military had like many, many years of entrepreneurship before I even came into the military. I didn't know it was called entrepreneurship. In fact, I didn't even know how to say the word. When I got to the projects, my mom was poor too. So it was a single family home. I think I saw my father before he passed away about 5-6 times in my entire life. So as a kid, it was an absentee father scenario. And my mom, she was unemployed for a lot. a lot of times we live on welfare and, the welfare system, food stamps and Section 8 housing scenario. The projects is what we call that. We thought the projects was just like a cool place where cool people hung out. We didn't know that the drugs and the gangs and the violence and the shooting, that it didn't happen all over the world. But during that space where I was in the projects, because my mom didn't have any money, I saw her being resourceful. So I had to come up with ways to be resourceful, modeling what I saw her do to get money, because no one had money, no one anywhere.
Right.
You couldn't walk to a family member and get money. So I started creating things. So I started creating bracelets. I started creating keychains and all types of little random things that people just wanted, and they would buy them for me. So I would make keychains out of shoestrings that I would go to, and I would take a list. I got a sheet of notebook paper and would take a list of names of people who wanted a bracelet, who wanted a keychain, and I would charge them in advance and take the money that I got from them and go to, we had a store called Super 10. It was kind of lower version of Family Dollar. And I don't even know if Family Dollar is all around the world, but it's a Dollar General type store. It was a very, very low class store, but you could walk in and you could buy a pack of shoestrings that had like 10 shoestrings in there for $1. So I would take 2 shoestrings, braid them together and sell it for $1.50. And those braid types were like things that they would attach to their keychain, things that they would make necklaces out of. They would have them as bracelets and whatever little thing that they wanted to wear. And I would make these, I don't know what you call these, circles with braidings in between it, and they would hang them in their house as decorations. So I would get their money and get what they wanted, to find out which item they wanted, and charge them up front. And I would go to the store and buy the item and use their money to purchase the stuff. And I would sit back and I would make it. Then I would give it to them. And whoever paid up front, they would get a discount. That was how that worked. And I realized real quick that I could do that almost in anything. I would get people's money, say, hey, I can do this thing for you. And then I would go buy stuff. And I realized that, oh, wait a minute, dude, you're spending a lot of time making these bracelets and it's not really doing anything for you money-wise. You're only making a few bucks. So Krispy Kreme was like the golden treat for everybody in the projects. And everybody in that area, it was like, I don't know, maybe 25, 30 buildings and 6 families to the building scenario. So I did the same thing with Krispy Kreme donuts, and Krispy Kreme donuts was like the golden treat. So they would sell for $3.50 at the grocery store, and I would sell them for $2.50. So $1 off. And anybody that bought them in advance would get them for $2.50. If they bought them from me the day that I went to Krispy Kreme and came back, I would sell them for $3. So they got 50 cents off. But at Krispy Kreme, they only cost me $1.25 per box. So I did the same thing. I took a list up and people would give me their money for $2.50, and I got a big black bag, and I would have enough money for somebody to pay me to drive to Krispy Kreme. So I paid a driver. He took me to Krispy Kreme. I got a big bag of donuts, and I came back and I was known as the donut kid. So I just kept doing little things like that, and I would cut grass. I used that money to get my word around. Hey, Tony cuts grass. And they called me Tony, by the way. So Tony is what my mom calls me. My middle name is Antonio. And that was too many syllables for a Southern woman. So she was like, I'm calling you Tony. Tony's your name, boy. So everybody was like, Tony's been around. He has the donuts. And everybody just ran around everywhere. Tony got donuts. Tony got donuts. And people would come out the house chasing me down. Can I get a box? Can I get a box? My mama said, I want a box. Here's $3, Tony. Can I get a box of donuts? And it was just in my blood, man. I did the entrepreneurship thing even as a kid. So when I came into the military, I already had that experience, that knowledge from cutting grass, washing cars, making keychains and washing big trucks. And it was just kind of like in my blood. I just did it, just trying to be resourceful, Yeah. So I came in as a cop, just talking a little more about my story in 99. And as a cop, I was at Texas, then I went to Minot, North Dakota, and then I went to Germany. And in the military, I mean, I started making real money. So I thought it was literally like $215 paycheck. And I thought it was just like I was balling. He couldn't tell me nothing. And I realized that nobody knew anything about technology. The whole dial-up internet thing was a thing, and no one knew anything about tech. So when I got to Germany, just by me being a tinkerer and resourceful, I started figuring out how to connect wires together on the router. I was like, that wire looks like that. And the wall wire looks like that. And I started connecting them together and started making things work. And I was like, wow, if they work by matching colors, I wonder what else I could do with this. So I got into networking, and everybody thought I was so smart and whatever, because I can connect matching colored wires.
Yeah.
I was like, this was rocket science. So that started my interest into technology. And as a cop, being security minded, it was just what we did. That's what the military taught me to do. And I loved it. And I just made the best of it and tried to do really, really good. That led me into higher interest in all kinds of things, security. And so when I left the security world as a cop, I moved straight into cyber and IT, which is apparently almost 30 years later. This is what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because like I started in like almost the same way. Like when I went through the Air Force, I was in maintenance, right? Doing completely the opposite. Like I was turning a wrench for a living. And all the way through when I left active duty as a staff sergeant, I was leading the shop floor like an assistant maintenance lead. Yeah. And so I was doing aircraft support equipment and just wrenching away. And I didn't really think anything of it. But then I had other priorities where I started growing a family, and that became my priority. And then that became more of my focus. And that's when I started, having an out. But before I had exited, I didn't know what else was beyond the Air Force because I was within that little bubble. The military just kept me busy all the time. And so I didn't think anything outside of that scope. And I didn't start really getting into like computers, business intelligence, data analytics until I think it was like maybe like close to 15 years ago. And I remember taking on an extra duty. And instead of doing maintenance, I was stationed in Japan. I met my wife in Okinawa, and they had an opportunity to where I could go into the MOC, which is the Maintenance Operations Center. And the Maintenance Operations Center would control and monitor actions on the flight line and oversee maintenance operations for the airfield. And that really opened my eyes because it was a back door. It was behind the curtains, and I started getting really savvy with looking at things, and they're like, hey, you're really good with Excel, and what can you do to do this? And I started designing dashboards, and, at the time, all we had was Microsoft products. So, so how do I build it up? So I taught myself how to script in VBA. And so I was like, okay, Visual Basic. And I literally replaced an entire obsolete program out of Visual Basic. I coded it. And it started doing automatic things based on conditional formatting. I synced the product to the clock, and this was getting reported to the general. And so it was like, okay. So I started with that, and I was like, oh, this really interests me. And I started getting into it. And that's how I started. I was going to ask too, like I was going to ask like what kind of caught your eye when you left the Air Force leading in entrepreneurship, but you've already had that going on for you. You already kind of knew how to navigate that. But I was a little on the opposite end where growing up, I didn't have any of that. It took me a while to figure things out. There was nothing guiding me. I didn't have any mentors growing up, and they don't teach financial literacy in school. So, man. Honestly, I wish the system was designed differently, but here we are. People have to fend for themselves, and then you have to teach others and hope that more people can catch on. And so I guess as a minority entrepreneur and a veteran, do you have any unique obstacles that you had to face, and how did you overcome those challenges to really shape your business philosophy?
Oh my. Wow. There's a lot to unpack with that, almost with every entrepreneur life, but just speaking from my own personal experience, I- nobody in my family had anything. No one. There was no one that I could look to say, this is the way. And there was no mentors. There was no dad. And it's kind of weird as being like, we had a lot of racism growing up. I mean, a lot of it was very heavy. If you had dark skin, you were just not liked. And I didn't like that. I did not like the fact that people just treated you different because the color of your skin. I'm like, you don't know me. So
Right.
how are you and why are you treating me this way? And the context behind that would be something as similar as I walk into a grocery store or walk into a shop or something like that. And the people would follow me around. They just knew the little black kid don't have any money. So I'm just going to follow him around because he's going to steal something. And I did not like that level of just feeding me that way, just at the sight of me. So I started dressing nicer. And I realized that dressing nicer made people treat you different. And it went from dressing nice. I'm like, so I figure it's just how I look. So what else can I do to get some respect? And I realized that just a lot of the minorities we weren't taught to read books. We weren't taught to know anything. We weren't really taught anything at all. We just had these instinctual survival skills and what we call now street skills and street smarts. The street smarts are good for social intelligence pieces, but actually navigating the landscape of how business works, there's no format for us to follow. There is no blueprint or dotted line to track down. So I started asking questions, man, and every question that I would ask would take me to another arena. So first off, I'm like, how do you get out of this trap of just working for a job somewhere? And who are the people that have money? And these questions were lurking in my mind, and I never found answers to them, but I always stayed hungry for it. And I remember I was standing in line in the commissary, and I looked, and there were some magazines on the shelf that said software engineers, $95,000 a year. And when I saw that, I was like, software engineer, what's a software engineer? What do they do? So I had no idea. I'm in the military. I had kids. I think I had 2 or 3 kids at the time. Can't remember exactly. But when I saw that book, it was literally the start of me saying, oh, I can make more money if I'm a software engineer. And had no idea that I had to go take calculus classes and I had to take all of these programming classes. I just saw 95,000 on that magazine. I'm like, man, $95,000 is a lot of money. I want to go make that kind of money. So I started going to school, and the school environment was just a place where it just started me being exposed to more people that knew more things. And it was just that, man. It was just a breadcrumb after breadcrumb after breadcrumb after breadcrumb that would lead me to one other thing. And it's so many different scenarios. I don't know if we have time to even dive into all of it, but I think that magazine, seeing that on the shelf at the commissary, was my starting point of finding other ways that make more money and take care of my family a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally understand that.
And I didn't even buy the magazine. I couldn't afford to buy it. I just saw it. Sad.
Yeah. So I guess from that point on, what was the moment that really changed everything for you, transitioning from that, like starting with seeing the magazine and then just coming to that realization, like, hey, I want to pursue this kind of path. I want to gain this kind of knowledge. What was really that pivotal moment for you that just kind of blew everything out the water, where you just really wanted to go full all in with it?
So I think, I don't know if it was a pivotal moment in my adulthood. I think the pivotal moment happened in my childhood. Just watching my mom struggle, right? She was most definitely just a key source for me wanting to do better and provide a better way for just our family. Not only for my kids personally, but just taking care of my mom, because I watched her sacrifice. I watched her resourcefulness, and I'm like, man, one day I'm going to put her in a house. One day I'm going to retire her. And I just wanted better. And we were a Christian family, so we had a lot of religious based principles in our family, and knowing that she's never going to have, but she just didn't have a husband, nobody to help take care of her. So I wanted to take care of and I wanted to take care of my family. So I knew that entrepreneurship and having businesses was what people that had a lot of money or a lot of resources had. So I wanted that. In the military, you don't get exposure to how to build a business, and you don't get that stuff. But it was lurking in the back of my mind, man. I was just like, one day I'm gonna have a business. So I think the pivotal point was just knowing that we had nothing and I wanted to do something about it. So while I was in the military, still working, I wanted to start my own lawn care business. I wanted to start this scripting business because when I saw that magazine, I went to school for software development. I'd already started going to school for all kinds of other stuff. And so I got my law enforcement degree. I got my information assurance degree, and they were just the Air Force, Community College of the Air Force degrees that they give to you for the curriculum. You still have to take the classes, right? So I got those, and it really didn't do much for me. So my next course of action was to figure out if this software engineering degree would do anything for me. So I went to school and got that degree as well, got a job as a software engineer, and then got the job for, I think it was $81,000 when I first started it in the federal space. But $81,000 still wasn't enough to take care of family, kids, and have a decent life.
Yeah.
So I think it just started back then, man. But the breadcrumb approach, the way that I describe it, just took me from one thing to another, to another, to another. The exposure, the different things has kind of been my story. Every exposure at every level opened me up to see things from a different angle, to see more opportunities that was out there. Because as a kid, growing up where I grew up, you just weren't exposed to anything. So you didn't know what you didn't know because you didn't know that it could be known. It was the unknown unknowns. So I think the whole college and going in the military and being exposed and traveling around the world, that piece is the piece that really opened the door for me. And I started reading books, and everybody in this space, they'll go to this book, and it's the one that kind of helped pivot my whole mental approach to business. Think and Grow Rich and Napoleon Hill. That was the key book that made me realize that, dude, there's a whole world of knowing out there that once you learn it, you most definitely change who you are as a person. So Think and Grow Rich was the first book that turned me on to reading more books. 3 Feet from Gold, everything from Napoleon Hill I wanted to read. And it turned me on to a whole list of other authors and entrepreneurs and putting me in this space, going to Tony Robbins concerts and everything that was happening in the entrepreneur space. I wanted to be exposed to it. I wanted to be close to them. I wanted to find out something about it. And still to this day, man, I think I'm still hungry for knowledge in that space. I most certainly know, even after 20 something years of studying material, I still have a deep hunger for more information, more knowledge, more understanding, more abilities to do what I'm doing at just a more efficient, better space and more practically useful way. So I don't know if there's ever going to be a point where I'm like, okay, I think I know it all. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
So,
I think it's important that we're constantly learning something new every day. And if we're not learning, we're not evolving, we're not growing. And yeah, I mean,
yeah.
in that aspect, it's nice to learn something new because you want to keep doing that. You want to grow. And
Yeah.
so growing up and going through everything that you've been through, so I would assume like your definition of success has continued to evolve over time because you started out very humble, and then each phase of your life was like a stepping stone into the next chapter of your life, figuring things out and getting new knowledge and working with new resources and discovering new things. And I think that's pretty great because it's not a lot of people can actually go through so much of that transformation to realize how much of that potential that somebody has. And you've kind of figured it out.
I don't know if I figured it out, but I most definitely have, every one of those pivotal points.
Yeah. I mean,
you start to see things like people don't always like for you to succeed. You start seeing weird things that you just don't expect. Now, like you'll see the suit jacket, you'll see the shirt, and it looks fancy. There's some people that hate you just because you are who you are, but they have no idea what you've had to go through to get to where you are.
exactly.
And some of those moments of hatred has turned into people actually taking action. In my mind, I just wanted to do the best job that I could. Right? And sometimes through my experience, I found out that sometimes doing the best that you can, it just creates opposition in people's mind because they perceive you one way as this person that's all buttoned up and perfect. So they want to find flaws in you. And they do, and when they find a flaw, they just magnify it and sometimes punish you. So if I was to say that I'd learned anything in this space with resilience or just back piece, I just say that as long as you keep moving, you really will find solutions to almost every problem. The keep moving piece is the thing that I think I discovered. Because some of the heavy hitting blows that I got, I mean, I got falsely accused of stuff while I was in the military, got put on control roster, UIF, and I thought my career was over. And I was a master sergeant at the time. I was enlisted. I wasn't an officer, but I had a pretty clear roadmap to be an officer. Firewall 5 EPRs. I don't even know if that's a thing anymore. I had the notices and letters and recommendations from wing commanders and senior enlisted personnel. And I had everything on a perfect roadmap and a perfect track to become an officer. And I got misread and misjudged by another officer. And it cost me. It cost me dearly. And I had multiple of those throughout my military career, things that people misjudged me by and labeled me wrong. And it came with just punitive actions that weren't just. They weren't right. They weren't accurate. And it cost me things that I think now are absolutely pivotal to my success because it gave me a viewpoint that not everybody that sees you will like you. Not everybody that sees you will support you. And you have to know that just taking the next step will make this okay. So those things happen. This is my 7th business. I don't know if you're aware of that. I had many other businesses erected. I started a travel agency back before cheaptickets.com and Expedia and all of them were a thing. I used to design software to go out and pull information from Yahoo, Google, and I think MySpace was the place that I would pull data from. I would pull data from all kinds of places and pull it into one little website, and I would sell travel from there. I had multiple other MLMs that I worked with and started another lawn care service. I started Key Zero, which is a company that founded CPI type software. I designed some software that would go out and do all types of continuous process improvement and got some pretty big contracts with that and ended up having to let that company go because some wrong partnerships and things that just didn't go right. And here we go. And here we are with SURV7X. And this company here that I started is most definitely something that I'm proud of. I'm proud of it because the entire name of the company is centered around serving. Serve is the name of the company. 7X is just an internal meaning. So, yeah, my story has been quite interesting for the sake of just hardship on top of hardship.
Yeah.
It's just trenching through just not having resources, not having help, not having people, and taking that as an opportunity to learn and just putting one foot in front of the other. That has been my story, man.
Yeah. Well, I think anybody that's going to listen to your story, I think that's going to be just pivotal for anybody that's trying to make it out there and trying to figure things out, because everybody that has a rough time, there's always going to be somebody that's going to have it harder than them. And when they listen to somebody that's really had it rough, it's going to shed some light and be like, okay, well, maybe I can actually take some action to make my situation better, but everything that you've gone through, I mean, you've had to figure it out. You've had to get resourceful. And what are some specific strategies that you think other people could apply to their life and to try to get into a position where they can level up professionally and even explore entrepreneurship?
Wow. I think the thing that I know is something that I learned from, Tony Robbins. He talks about systems in some of his early books before he started writing about money, and mindset was a thing. But one of the things that I think is the driving force behind how I think is knowing that a system is a system, just like driving a car. So when I look at entrepreneurship, I think about the way that he referenced a system. And in the space right now, you have a guy named Alex Hormozy, who's most definitely been just a prominent source for how to get into the entrepreneur space. But the two of them married together is some of the things that I think about almost every day when it comes to entrepreneurship. A system, and then finding a theory of constraints. And you'll hear Alex speaking about the theory of constraints a lot. If you find out how the system works and you find out what's constraining it, what's stopping it from flowing, you could pretty much run anything. And that's the way that I see entrepreneurship and almost anything that you want to do or desire to do. Find out how it works and find all the looky parts in how it works and find out why it's not working anytime it's not working. And you can do anything.
Yeah.
That's my belief. And it's just like driving a car. Like if I put you in a car right now, I could put a 16-year-old in the car. They will probably not know what a thermometer is. They won't know what an oil pan is. They won't know what an oil stick is. They won't even know what an engine and cylinders and pistons and exhaust. And they won't know all of that stuff. But I can give them the keys to it and they can get in it and they can drive. And I can say, go to this point and come back. A car is just a system of systems of systems. And I don't need to know all of how it works in order for me to work it. As a CEO, I can drive a company just like a 16-year-old can drive a car just by knowing that the systems are there and knowing what I need to do to operate and manage those systems. So a 16-year-old could drive to the store, do his thing and come back, and that system would work. If you got a flat tire, my job as a CEO is being able to recognize how to look around and see the flat tire and say, hey, mechanic people, you guys can come fix this. They come back and fix the system that are the portion of the system. And I get back in it and drive it. You know, I don't need to know all of the details. I just know how the system works, and knowing that how they all interact together is kind of the thing that I like to study. I like to study how it all works together, and I like to look at how it all works together. I don't need to be an expert at everything, but just understanding how they all interwork together to be able to identify the constraint. That's my focal point as a CEO. So if you want to get into the entrepreneur space, I think entrepreneurship at senior levels or CEO levels is just simply understanding how your system works. And if you can do that and you know how to identify the constraints quickly and alleviate them or, remedy them, you could run any business.
Yeah.
That's
definitely a good way to put it. I love your analogies. I know you shared a couple of them with me a while back, and they are constantly in my head on the way that I kind of think about things, because it's a way to simplify it visually and, learning to apply a certain mechanism and how to approach a methodology, right? And and you're absolutely right, because if you can recognize a problem and solve it before somebody else can approach it, if you get there first and you can recognize it, solve it, fix it for them, then you have that value, So what are some things that you had wished you had known sooner? Just kind of reflecting on it.
The thing that I still value to this day, and it is a thing that I remind myself to do this almost on a daily, is get your environment right. It is the most important thing you could ever do as a CEO. And I'll give this scenario here. You can take a fish and you can put it at the bottom of a tree and you can say, climb, climb, and you can yell at it, scream at it, and the fish will never get up the tree. And you can feed it. You can give it the best nourishment. You can give it protein powder. You can give it all kinds of stuff, but it's in the wrong environment. You could take that same fish and put it in any water, and it will just naturally do what it does. And sometimes I think people don't recognize the importance of an environment that's healthy for them to do what they're doing. And I like to use that analogy, but sometimes people judge themselves by their ability to be the fish climbing the tree, and they're just in the wrong environment. They just are. And it is just as toxic for you mentally to try and recover yourself and say, I'm a fish and I'm going to climb this tree. It's extremely toxic for you to think that you're going to have a successful life doing that. It just won't. So if I walk up to you right now and you're trying to build a company, but everybody around you is just constantly saying, hey, Jay, man, you can never do this. You can never do this. And Jay, man, I can see you doing your thing, but it's probably not going to work. Hey, Jay, good job, buddy. Good job. All of those little negative comments to me are negativity that just tears into you. And it is equivalent of the fish trying to climb a tree scenario in my mind. That's the environment you put yourself in. And so what I say the answer to that is get around people that are doing what you're trying to do. That is probably way more important than any type of negativity. I'm telling you, it is toxic to what you're trying to do. If it's not helping you, pushing you forward, you will find resistance in ways that you just won't see it and you won't be able to detect it. And sometimes just being in the right environment will help correct things that you can't correct. And it just is the thing that I go to. So I remind myself, like, on a daily, check your environment, check your people, check your surroundings, look at where you are and make sure where you are is the right environment for where you are and where you want to be and where you're trying to do. It's vitally important.
That's sound advice, because you have to really evaluate the situation you're in. And if you need to change those variables in order to make it work, that's what you have to do. But you have to recognize that. So you're giving some really great advice. But one thing that I want to ask you is, what's the best piece of advice you've received?
I think not having to do everything by myself is the best piece of advice I could have received. And putting more context to that, starting a business or starting anything that's noteworthy is going to be hard. And it's going to require like a lot of moving parts and a lot of moving pieces. I think the best thing that could have been told to me is knowing how to find people to solve the problem is the key to cutting out all of your wasted time as a CEO. And sometimes the people will solve the problem for you in seconds that would take you years to solve for yourself. So I connect with everybody. My LinkedIn page right now, I'm growing that and having conversations with people. And I grow my network, grow my people work, probably more importantly than I spend on learning technical things about business. Because just like this, the way that I think about it is, if you're in my network and you know how to solve a financial problem, I can go take a class that could take me 4 years to get that degree, or I can pick up the phone and say, hey, Jay, tell me how to solve this. That, hey, Jay, tell me how to solve this can solve my problem literally in minutes. Whereas going to school, getting a degree and trying to say, hey, I did this all by myself. I did this on my own. That is absolute foolishness in my personal opinion. And two, everything that we do is for people. Like, there's at no point will you ever get to a point in business or in anywhere where you're not serving and helping people somewhere, one person or multiple people. It's all about people. Everything that we do is about helping another human being. And I think realizing that and knowing that in my whole aspect of learnings and what I do, that has shaped how I approach business. My attitude, my perspective, everything is about helping another human being be a better version of them while I'm helping myself. So people is the thing, man. I think that's the thing that I stand on the most. You know, everything about business, everything about life is about making another human better. And that's that.
Yeah, that's great to kind of break that down. So that's essentially, you want to be the most efficient person you can be. You want to make things as simple and as streamlined as possible. You want to save time because you want to focus on a lot more of the more important, impactful things that are going to essentially scale you up in a better way in every aspect possible. But you want to save that time. And so building out your network, knowing the people that you know is going to get you there faster and more efficiently. And that's also going to help grow your network at the same time. And then, keeping the focus, keeping your eye on the ball on people is number one, and never losing sight of that. That's always going to be your prime focus and your connection to whoever your client may be. So it's always serving them because that is the purpose. So, I like that.
Got it, man. I think everything that we do is centered around that last thing. I mean, if you look at our Constitution, it says we the people. The entire Constitution is centered around protecting and defending people. We as Americans. So as a defense contractor, it sounds cliche-ish, but the entire Department of Defense, the entire military operations, and everything that we do as a government agency is simply to protect human beings that reside here in America. So the larger companies, the Lockheed Martins, the Boeings, and to include Apple and all of these secular ones that are not a part of the military operations, they're designed to serve human beings. And I don't ever want to get to a point in business or in life or in any arena that I step in that I lose sight of that, man.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's all about. It's about the human. Problems are only problems because we haven't figured out, and this is my view on it, it's only a problem because we haven't figured out the human that can solve it. Almost every problem that you have in business or in life and anywhere you go, there's a human that had been through it that can solve it. And in business world, that's the way I see business. A constraint in business is just a problem that you haven't identified yet. But the more humans you have that can identify these problems and solve them, the easier the business will run automatically, man. And I think business world is no different than life world, family world. It's the same. It's the same anywhere. So it's a philosophy that I like to stand out.
You got a lot of sound advice there. That's really just what I wanted to get to, and just really peel back what your story was and just really get behind the foundation of who you are and where you got to today, how that became that of Mr. Murray, CEO of SURV7X. And yeah. I mean, I think this is awesome, man. So this information is gold. It helps me. I think it's going to help a lot of people too. And overall, I mean, I
get back to you, man. I see you doing your thing. I haven't been tracking you super, super close because just literally been ultra busy and just diving into this space. A lot of it's new to me. So I most definitely salute you for what you're doing, man, and starting your podcast, bringing up people and bringing on voices to help share. As amateur as I am, I do most certainly believe that just the heart behind it, connecting with people really and just sharing just simplistic tools is monumental, man. Everybody has a dotted line, and that space in between those dots, sometimes we give up because we don't know how to connect. So the more people that you talk to, you're just helping connect those dotted lines, man, and making it clear for people to follow. So yeah. I salute you, what you're doing, man.
Thanks.
This is cool.
I hope so, because that was one of the reasons why I started the podcast, and my wife joined in on me because she wanted to serve a higher purpose, and she wanted to get connected to more people that were in tough spaces. So in order to realize that, we wanted to talk about things that were hard to talk about. So we start with our own origin story. There's a couple episodes that we have up there right now, and we just go through our origin story.
Yeah.
And eventually start bringing on more people so that we can talk to them and just shed some light on that and see the struggles that they had to go through. You're essentially being forged through the fire and coming out on the other side. But what did it have to take for you to get there? And I think it's it's important that we have these kinds of conversations. But I think, gosh, this is gold. So I just enjoy really genuinely catching up with you on everything like this.
Yeah, it's cool, man. And thanks for the invite. But yeah, it'll be good to catch up, brother.
Absolutely.
So again, I just wanted to thank Cillian for joining us and being on the show. It was so great to catch up with him. We love having him, and we'd enjoy having him back sometime in the near future.
Oh, for sure. His story was just so powerful. All the struggles he went through. I mean, there's not too many people that you can say grew up dirt poor, living in a wooden shack with no electricity, all the way to becoming a successful entrepreneur and running his own business that he built up. And even went through all the racism and hate, which I can relate to when I had grown up in Germany during a time when being a black or biracial wasn't that common. So I had to endure a time when there was racial tension directed towards me. And it really sticks with you on how people treat you, especially when it's hateful. It's just something you don't forget. But Cillian really made some wonderful points. And I love the analogies he had.
Yeah, like the fish climbing the tree.
Yeah, definitely. If you're in a toxic environment, you have to find a way to bring yourself into the right kind of environment. And he really made that point across using the fish and the tree as a great example. I also like how he compared himself as a CEO of this company to being the driver of a car. He's essentially controlling a system of systems, and he has to manage that. So I love how he put that.
Absolutely. This was such a great interview. And for those of you listening that enjoyed this episode, we'd appreciate your feedback and support as well. So please like, download, and share this episode for those who you think need to listen to this. And again, we have our video version of the interview with Cillian on YouTube, which you can play and listen to directly from the link we're putting down below in our show notes for this episode.
All right. We want to thank each and every one of you so far who's been listening to us and our journey and also this amazing episode. Don't forget to hit that follow button, and you can also hit that bell to make sure you're notified when one of our new episodes become available. We'd appreciate if you could give us a rating on whatever platform you're listening to. Until then,
see you next time.